What's up guys, my name's Stu, and today we're going to be talking about non-Federation ships from other Star Trek games that we'd like to see in Star Trek Online. Okay, last video we did Federation ships, so now let's dive into some of the alien ships from old Star Trek games. There's actually quite a lot to pick from, because a lot of the older games, particularly like Starfleet Command or Star Trek Armada or Legacy, they allowed you to play as more than one faction, so you can play as the Klingons, the Romulans, or whatever, and they would need counterparts to the Federation ships, so they had to create a lot of their own ships due to the lack of canon sources. To start off with, we'll be looking at some designs from Star Trek Dominion Wars, starting with the Cardassian Hutet-class Dreadnought. Whenever there's a discussion about Star Trek ships from old Trek games, it's almost guaranteed that the Hutet is going to be brought up by someone. Seriously, this thing and the Achilles are the only two reasons why anyone even remembers that game. The lore behind this ship is that it was a massive Cardassian dreadnought that was put into production after Cardassia formerly allied with the Dominion. With the resources brought in from the Dominion, the Cardassians were now able to start rebuilding their fleet, which had been decimated during their war with the Klingons. With the technology brought in from the Dominion, the Cardassians were able to develop this new Hutet-class dreadnought, which, was a clear sign that the Dominion was preparing for war because, this thing is huge. Now, I don't remember if it could actually do this in the game itself, but in the opening cinematic of Dominion Wars, you could see a Hutet-class launching two smaller Cardassian ships from, its lower portion, meaning those could be easily used as hangar pets. These ships were small Norrin-class frigates that were also original to the game. So if someone's looking for some fighter pets to go along with this ship, if they make it a Dreadnought, there's our perfect candidate, the Norrin class. The next ship from Dominion Wars is a Klingon ship called the Kvorcha class. It was meant to be sort of a blend between the Kvorcha class and the Burrell class, to have the power of a battlecruiser, but be a little bit more maneuverable, kind of like a bird of prey. It has a smooth and much more sleek design than you typically see of Klingon ships, especially from that era, and I think that would blend in with Star Trek Online's aesthetic really well. We've got one more ship from the Dominion Wars game, and that is the Gemhadar strike cruiser. This ship is another sort of blend of two existing ships. It's kind of like a halfway point between the larger battle cruiser and the smaller Gemhadar attack ship. This ship also features a much smoother, more sleek design than you typically see of ships from that era that, again, I think would also blend in really well with Star Trek Online. Though I gotta be honest, the main reason why this ship is here is mostly because I wanted to include at least one Gemhadar ship into this list, because, they are a playable faction. Moving on to some of the designs from the Interplay era of Star Trek games, first is the Romulan Snipe class bird of prey. It's basically a motion picture era version of the old Talis class bird of prey, and I really like that idea. You don't get to see really anything of that era for Romulan ships, canonically speaking. You can see some of the differences between the two, mainly the nacelles on the Snipe class are more rectangular shaped, much like the Starfleet ships of the same era, and this one also features a little head section at the front of the ship. Funny enough, Star Trek Lower Decks featured a very similar ship in the premiere of Season 2 during the holodeck scene. In the Cardassian hangar, where Mariner steals the USS Macduff, you can see a Romulan ship that looks remarkably like this in the background. I wouldn't go as far to say as that this ship is already canon, because you do see the same ship in Lower Decks at another angle, and there are some more differences, but it is a remarkable coincidence. Next is another Romulan ship, also from a couple of the Interplay games, is the Senator-class Romulan Warbird. I actually really like this design. I really like the swept-back wings. It kind of reminds me of a sort of TMP-era version of the Vastam. But it also has that third nacelle, which I think does a really good job of setting it apart from the Vastam, and I think this would just be a really cool ship to have in stow. Next is a Klingon ship, the, what was it called? The Vodlet. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'm pretty sure this one was in Klingon Academy and may have also been in the Starfleet Command games. I'm not 100% sure. The documentation on Memory Beta for these old Interplay games really isn't that great. But yeah, the Vodlet, I think it's a really cool design. It's got, it's like a 4-nacelled version of the D7, but much beefier looking too. This ship having 4 nacelles makes me think this could have been like a prelude to the Negvar, but production of the ship was probably derailed in the TMP era after Praxis exploded. At least that's my headcanon for it. We got one more Klingon ship from the Interplay days, the Qud class bird of prey. I think that's how you pronounce that. Q-U-D. Qud. Anyway, it's quite a bit larger than your standard Burrell class with more weapons mounts, and at the end of the wings, instead of disruptors, it looks like it has warp nacelles, which I thought was kind of a weird choice. Not gonna lie, the main reason this ship is here is because I felt the list was getting a little light on Klingon ships and I wanted to add one more. But if I want to go for something with a more bird of prey aesthetic, I would much rather have the Kvorcha from the earlier game. Now let's move on to the Activision era of Star Trek games, starting with the Romulan Shrike class. This was meant to be a small destroyer-class vessel that was meant to be a counterpart to the Defiant and Burrell-class ships in Star Trek Armada. I've always really liked this ship. It's one of the few Romulan designs that I've seen that really captures the Romulan bird of prey spirit, but in the TNG Romulan aesthetic. Next, also from Star Trek Armada, is the Romulan Griffin class. This ship was meant to be sort of a mid-sized cruiser for the Romulans. It's a really basic design, being a really flat ship with outstretched wings and a really pointy headpiece, but I think Star Trek Alliance art team could do some really interesting things with this and make this look like a spectacular looking ship. And for the 10th and what should be the last ship on the list, it's not going to be. I couldn't help myself. I'm going to be talking about like 3 more ships, so stay with us. This is the Romulan Draconari class from Star Trek Armada 2, and is another ship that I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing the name right. I always really like this design just because it takes the idea of Romulan ships always look like birds and makes it way more literal than anyone else did. It's got 2 outstretched wings, a little headpiece at the front, and 2 mounted wings at the bottom that kind of look like talons with disruptor mounts on them. This way it kind of looks like an actual bird of prey swooping down in for the kill. The ship's kind of funny looking, but that's kind of why I like it. Now for number 11 of this 10-part list is the Cardassian Dreadnought class cruiser. The ship is kind of unique because it features 2 secondary hull sections. So instead of like 1 tail sections that you see on the Galore, it has 2. In the comments on the last video, a lot of people were talking about the Proxima class from Star Trek Legacy and the Yamato class from the Starfleet Command games, which also feature 2 secondary hull sections on the ships, but those are Starfleet ships. Which, yeah, for Starfleet ships, I don't like that look. It's bulky, it's weird, I don't like it, I don't understand why you guys like it. I'm sorry, I just don't. But yeah, for some reason, I think it looks good on this Cardassian ship. Next up is actually a group of ships. These are the Kessok ships from Star Trek Bridge Commander. In the game, we see the Kessok using 2 different types of ships, this smaller frigate-type ship and a larger battleship. Later in the game, we also see this hybrid ship that is a combination of Cardassian and Kessok technology. Now, I don't know how feasible it is for them to introduce the Kessok into STO, but the ships are at the very least pretty interesting, and I feel like you could just drop them into the Infinity lockboxes and be done with it, you know, accompanied with a lore blog. The final ship on this list is going back to Star Trek Armada 2, and this is the Tactical Fusion Cube. I wasn't initially planning to talk about this ship because, well, it could never be a playable ship. We can't even get a normal Borg cube to be a playable ship, let alone one that's 8 times its size, so yeah, obviously that's not going to happen, but at the same time, I really want to fight one of these. So yeah, obviously not something that can be a playable ship, but I think it would be a really cool idea for a boss battle. So yeah, those are, what was it, 13 this time? No, 14 if you count the Norn. Yeah, 14 ships from other Star Trek games that I want in Star Trek Online. God, I just can't help myself with these lists. Let's do another top 3. If I had to pick 3 off this list, I'd probably say the Hutet, the Senator, and the Draconari. I like that one. It's silly looking. Anyway, just like last time, if there are any ships from older Star Trek games that you want to see in STO, whether they're on this list or not, let me know in the comments down below. While you're down there, be sure to hit like and subscribe and hit that bell for notifications. If you'd like to support the channel further, feel free to hit that join button or the super thanks button, or find the merch store link in the description. Either way, thank you so much for watching. My name's Stu, and I will see you guys next time.